all for joining us, and it's so nice to see such a large turnout. I'm really touched. I know part of the reason you're here is to celebrate my birthday, so thank you, thank you, thank you. I want to thank everybody who is now watching this video on YouTube. I'm so glad you tuned in. Please watch all of our videos. They are lovingly prepared for us by our assistant minister, Reverend Kelly Halleck. She does a great job. And we have made a video of every Sunday gathering talk for the last 2.5 years. So there's lots of videos, lots of different speakers. Please watch them. And once again, thank you everybody who is joining us on ACI and Gather. We're so happy that you are here. Okay, so we're celebrating my birthday. I had a birthday on Thursday. So, happy birthday to me, happy birthday to me, happy birthday, Reverend Tony, happy birthday to me.
You're a ham.
I know. Well, why wait to sing? Just get it over with now. Okay, so I brought some things for show and tell. Okay, so this is a copy of my birth certificate. I'm told that public officials should show their birth certificate every once in a while.
They had those then?
Yeah, they had. Yes, they did. You know, last year I actually brought my real birth certificate, and I was totally paranoid the whole day that I was going to lose it. I kept checking it like every 5 minutes to make sure. So I decided to save myself the paranoia, and I just created a copy of my birth certificate.
Born in Kenya?
Yeah, born in Kenya. I love this birth certificate. You know, it was from the little town of Canastota, New York, because it's a generic birth certificate. You see that it says it's son or daughter, and they just cross out the one they don't want. So daughter was crossed out, so a son was born. Isn't that great? They couldn't produce two different birth certificates or a gender neutral birth certificate. That was 1952. You know, what do you say? But anyway, you can see that I was born in June the 7th of 1952. I was born Anthony Carmen Ponticello, Jr. So a number of years ago, I had my name, I legally changed my name, and so now I am actually Reverend Tony Ponticello. That actually is my name. When the IRS sends me tax notices, it says Reverend Tony Ponticello on it. And my driver's license says Reverend Tony Ponticello on it. I also brought my first ordination certificate. I've actually been ordained a couple of times, but this is my first ordination certificate that was issued by our predecessor organization, which was the California Miracles Foundation. And I was ordained by them on June 7th, 1986. Wow. So 32 years ago. 32 years ago. So, you know, I've been on the job as Reverend Tony Ponticello for 32 years. And shortly after I was ordained by California Miracles Foundation, that organization folded, and that's when we formed the current organization, the Community Miracle Center. And I just existed with this ordination, and that was Reverend Tony, and that actually helped us form the Community Miracle Center, the fact that I was already a reverend. But then after about 11 years of being at the Community Miracle Center, I decided that I wanted to be ordained by the church that I was serving as executive minister for. And so I lobbied the board of directors to consider the fact that I had been teaching our ordination classes for over 10 years at that time, and if they would just acknowledge that and ordain me, which they decided to do. And so then I was ordained again on October 17th, 1997, as the 20th minister of the Community Miracle Center of this church. All our ministers have minister numbers, and some people wonder why I'm not the first, and so I'm trying to explain why I'm not minister number 1. Reverend Larry Bedini was minister number 1. I'm actually minister number 20, and I was ordained at the same ordination that Reverend Dusalthea Ramasir Singh was ordained at. It was on her birthday. That's why it's really easy for me to remember the date, October 17th. It was 1997. And I remember that specifically because her mother came for her ordination, and her sister, and it was a hoot. So, as I've shared sometimes about, you know, when your birthdays, you tend to think about your past a little bit and your life, and my past is a little blurry. Like I don't really remember a whole lot. I have to work at remembering my past. I especially have to work at remembering before I moved to San Francisco. That's really obscure and blurry. It's like it didn't even happen to me. I don't know who that was. when I visit back east, like I visit my sister, then bits and pieces of it come back. And, some people like to say, well, it's because you're getting older, Tony. But I don't buy into any of those age beliefs, I just say it's because I just live totally in the present, and the past doesn't mean a whole lot to me. So I let it go, and I don't think about it very much. And actually, A Course in Miracles tells us, especially like with our childhood and that stuff, that the image that we have and the memory that we have of all that is actually of a childhood that probably didn't even happen. And I know that when I get together with my sisters and they'll describe something and I'll describe it, and we all describe it differently. And but we're all sure that that's how it was, but we're not describing it the same way, and yet we all were there. And so I'm really clear that the way that we remember things in the past, and especially in our childhood, probably isn't the way they actually happened if somebody had been filming them or something. And A Course in Miracles says that. It says the childhood of your body and its place of shelter are a memory now so distorted that you merely hold a picture of a past that never happened. And so I think when we start thinking of our past and maybe things that happened in the past that weren't pleasant, remember that that's just something that we've rehearsed over and over in our minds, and the actual event was probably very different than we are remembering it. So, we're going to remember it, and we're going to have our feelings about it, but we can also hold it pretty lightly, because what actually happened was probably not what we remember. And we're never going to know what actually happened. So why hold on to it with such tenacity? I mean, the things that I do remember, and again, I don't know how they happened, is I remember that my father was a great guy. He was a very gentle person. I talked about this a little last week. And he had mental illness problems. And he had the type of mental illness problems that are hereditary. He was bipolar. And he would be functioning along really well, and then he would go into these really periods of very high anxiety where he got totally dysfunctional, and periods of really extreme depression, and he was hospitalized many times when I was a child. What used to pull him out of these periods was electroshock treatment, which was very common in those days to administer to people. Actually, it's made a big comeback, electroshock treatment. It's called...
Thank God!
It's called ECT now, electroconvulsive therapy, and it's actually made a big comeback, so let's hear it for ECT.
It's cheaper than beer.
Yeah, anyway, I remember that, and I remember, in those days, even today, but in those days you can imagine that mental health stigma was a big thing, and it was this family, I don't say it was a disgrace, but it was something that, you couldn't really talk about, and, you didn't talk to me. My father felt ashamed, after he would be well, even just, to talk. He kind of had it, we didn't really hide it, but we hid it. And my father had a series of these. And the thing that I remember about them now, though, is that they were a motivation for me early in my life to just focus on healing, and to focus on staying peaceful, and to focus on staying sane. And I think it really colored my whole life in some way, and is partly why I am doing what I am doing today, which was because focusing on something that would help keep one sane and peaceful and out of those extreme black periods like my father had was really important, not only for me, but in some way to offer that to the memory or the connection of my father. He was not able to heal that himself. He functioned within it, not able really to heal it. And so when it started happening to me, which, as I said, because there's this belief system that this is all hereditary, and it did happen to me, I remembered my dad, and I offer the healing that I've had from that to that connection with my father. And so, as I said, on this occasion of my birthday, I want to offer my healing from my mental health issues to the memory of my dad, and offer that healing to him. I was very, very motivated to do that. So I thank him, and we did it, Dad. It took a generation, but it's okay. It takes as long as it takes, and I know my father is happy for the healing that we now have. Okay, more to the present time. This past week, my birthday, Thursday was my birthday, I took a quick trip with Reverend Dusa Althea, my lady friend, as many of you know. 27 years, how many? 27 years this year we're going to celebrate? 27 years of a romantic, intimate relationship. Woohoo!
Yay!
And we have never once broke up or anything like that. The key to success, though, as we say, is we don't live with each other. See, so that we don't live with each other. Just take that in a little bit. 27 years, but we don't live with each other. Never have, never wanted to. It was never an issue. Okay, so we took a trip to Santa Rosa and took a couple days off. And I am a person that works pretty much all the time, so I rarely have days off, and that's okay. But it was really interesting to have a couple days off. Now, I never really have a day off, because the truth is I got healing team emails to write and send, and I've got lessons of the day to post all over the place, and I have to monitor it. You know, there's always a couple hours of work every single day. But it was a couple of days off, and it was great. It was great. I had a lot of fun. I figured the last time I had a day off really like that was in October when we went away for Deuce Althea's birthday. So luckily our birthdays are on opposite times of the year, so at least it gives me a couple days off at different times of the year. And it was wonderful. And I did something, and some people are really surprised. I actually went out into nature. You know my nature rap, those of you who've heard me talk before. I'm not too keen on nature. And I'll tell you a little bit why I'm not too keen on nature. I think nature's is a little suspicious for me about nature. But anyway, we went, there's a state park right next to Santa Rosa, a big 5,500 acre state park. It's a little underdeveloped. It's just got trails in it, one little ranger station, one little ranger there. And we got there and we looked at a topographical map of the place, and it was like hilly and mountainous, and right in the middle of it, in between these two mountains, was a little lake, like a spring-fed lake, and you could hike to it, but it was far, and it was up and down hills, and we did it. And now people said, yeah, Tony, you don't like nature. And I said, no, I got to remind you, I've always said nature is really good for about 2 or 3 hours. That's it. And we were on the hike for 2 hours and 45 minutes. That was really pushing it to the limits. But okay, my thing about nature, if you're new here, it's like nature is always telling us we're gonna die. I mean, that's, even in the forest, it was like, there were the nice, fresh, young trees, they were so beautiful and green, and then there were the older trees, and then there were the trees that were kind of dying, and then there were the ones that had fallen across and cut. You know, it's just like this whole succession, it's always right there in your face, that you're young, and you're vital, and you're brilliant, and you're green and alive, and then you get a little older, and you get a little worn, and then pretty soon you're not so healthy anymore, and then you die and you decay. And so, like, 3 hours of that is enough for me. 3 hours of that is enough for me. So that's my trip about nature. And you know, if you don't know it, you know it now. So that's why I'm like, nature seems to always be telling us so. But nature is really funny, because nature is just beautiful. You know, it's just like, it's this thing that we're like obsessed with, and we just want, and we just think it's so wonderful. But it's kind of like the moth to the flame thing for me. It's like we're obsessed with it. It's like, well, it is. It's like we're just obsessed with it, and we want it so badly, and we just keep like go. It's like going to the light, going to the light, going to the light. Yeah. And I think that's what I just want you to be aware of. The next time you think of how beautiful nature is, I just love nature, I just love nature. That's what it's going to do to you. Now,
I don't think so. Yeah, I have a different take.
Okay, yeah, and a lot of people do. I'm very aware of that. Now, the thing about Reverend Tony, okay, I want to talk to you about myself just a little bit. I'm a really likable guy. Everybody, most people who know me like me. That's really a great thing. I liked being liked. I mean, who doesn't like being liked? I guess some people don't like being liked, but I like being liked. I like that I'm a likable guy. I've been a likable guy all throughout my 31 plus years of being Reverend Tony Ponticello. And people like me, and then they come and listen to me, and then they come and hear me say these things like about nature, and then they all take a step back from me. He's a really nice guy, he's just a little weird. I'm really aware of that. I also think the whole vacation thing, I was going to talk about the vacation thing. So we're trained to believe that vacations are wonderful things. Vacations are wonderful things. We all like to take vacations. And yet, you look at people who take vacations, they're frequently really stressed when they're on vacation. It costs money they don't really think they have. And people come back from vacations, they frequently get sick, you know. Yeah, it's a very common come back, oh, I got a cold. I was on vacation, I got a cold. So vacations are really kind of stressful and actually quite hard for people, yet we're totally addicted to this thing that we call a vacation. And I wrote an article years ago about this, and I looked it up. How long ago did I write that article about vacations not really being the thing? And it was called the Vacation-Vocation Shift, that we should shift from thinking that we need vacations to shift to thinking that we should embrace our vocation. It's only one letter different. And that was a real important shift to make, and that was more enlivening and invigorating than thinking about taking time off. And this is another one of those strange things about Reverend Tony that people like back away from. And like, I remember this, and I've given lectures about this 20, 30 years ago, is that when I first moved to San Francisco, you know, I'm from the East Coast, and I loved that it was sunny and here a lot, and that we didn't really have winters. And I loved that even in the middle of the winter, sometimes you could go sun yourself, and that was just amazing to me. And so I developed a habit, and because I worked in the evenings a lot in restaurants, I had a lot of days off, that I would go and sun myself in Dolores Park, which is an inner city park. It's actually very close to where I live, so I would go and sit and sun myself in Dolores Park. And that was great for a while, but you know, the truth is, it gets really boring. It gets really boring, but in my mind, I had told myself that I'd like to do this. And time is limited in the world, that's what we think, and that you should, if at all possible, do those things that you like to do with the limited amount of time that you have. And that's like vacation too. Do those things. Go on vacation. Go sun yourself in Dolores Park. Those are fun things that you like to do, but it's rooted in this idea that time is limited. So you've got to do those fun things that you like to do, because there's all this other time where you can't do the things that you really like to do. But so when you get a little time, so anytime I had a little time, I was there in Dolores Park, and it was torturous. What I really realized is I hated it. I mean, it was boring. It was just boring. And my whole life revolved around getting to the park and making sure and schedule that I had enough time in the sun, and I loved being tan. I loved going back east to see my family, and I was all nice brown and tan, and I lived in California. I looked like the California boy, and they always made fun of my tan, and it was, you know, it was hard, though, because it was really boring when I had to admit it. And the one blessed thing about those sunning myself in Dolores Park is I had spare time, I would read. And that's when I read A Course in Miracles for the first time, is when I was sunning myself in Dolores Park. And A Course in Miracles, of course, trains us to question every value that you have. And at one point, I just really got that I'm questioning this value of lying in the sun for hours and hours in Dolores Park, bored. And then I got that it was rooted in this idea that time was limited, and that I should do, if I could, those things that I have decided that I like to do because time is limited. And the fact that I was buying into a belief that time was limited, my life was limited, was the fact that I was buying into a belief of dying, that I was going to die, and that time was limited, and that every hour that I spent in Dolores Park was an hour of me dying. That I was actually dedicated to my own death. And that's why it felt so awful. And I stopped. It was like, this thing just went like that. And I said, I don't have to do this anymore. I don't have to lie in the sun anymore. I can lie in the sun if I just really want to, but not out of this belief in limited time and finite life. And I remember talking about that 30-some years ago. And again, everybody kind of likes me, except when I talk about things like that. And then they say, he's a little weird. Now the thing about this is, when I think about that and I look at these old articles that I wrote 30 years ago, or 25 years ago, I can really stand behind them. And what I can see is that articles that I wrote, sermons that I gave 20-some years ago, I can look at them and read them now, and I might not express exactly the same things that I expressed at that time, but I can still stand behind them and think that they're great. And that was a real blessing to me, and something that I really took in and that I felt really good about while I was on our little 2-day trip, is that I've had the same job for 31 and a half years, and I really feel good about just about everything I've done on the job and about everything that I've accomplished. We're getting ready to do our 9th conference next year in Boston. I feel great about the 8 conferences that we have done. I feel great about, we got a bird crowing.
Sorry.
That's the timer, I think. Isn't
Yeah.
it? Yeah, that's the timer. I recognize her.
That time.
They're telling me I'm talking too long? Okay. I feel great about all the things that we've accomplished and that I've accomplished, especially during my work life here as Reverend Tony Ponticello with Community Miracle Center. In the past year, just a few things. We launched the healing team. A number of you are members of the healing team. We've got 50+ members praying on that list every single day. I think that's just amazing, and it's been a real blessing in my life. It's focused my life. It's focused my practice. I've been a better lesson practicer of A Course in Miracles than I think I ever have been in all my years of study. So I think that is great. That San Francisco conference that we had in February, I think, was amazing. That was really a personal achievement for me. We did that in the atmosphere of lower enrollment than we expected. People telling us that the age of big International Course in Miracles conferences was over. As I was trying to put together the next conference in Boston, I wasn't getting the support from the people and the presenters, and there was a lot of buzz, and people were just, it was like the idea is, maybe conferences are over. And I took that in, and I took it to Holy Spirit, and the guidance I got was, no, conferences are still strong, and instead of stepping back, you need to step forward and make them even bigger.
Yeah.
And that's what we did, and we made it into a 4-day conference instead of a 3-day conference, and we went to another major city, Boston, and there was an energy at that San Francisco conference, and even though everybody was really skeptical about Boston at the very beginning and the first presenters meeting, by the end, everybody was really excited and everybody was buying blocks of tickets, and we've now sold more tickets to Boston than we've ever sold this far out from a conference. I think it's like 330-some tickets have already been sold. We max out at 400, so we could very likely sell out. And so I'm very happy about that. On my birthday itself, I do lesson number 158. If you do A Course in Miracles workbook lessons in the yearly sequence, you always do the same lesson on your birthday. It's your birthday lesson. And my birthday lesson has this line. It says, "A teacher does not give experience because he did not learn it. It revealed itself to him at its appointed time, but vision is his gift. This he can give directly." So I can't really give any of you, anybody, my experiences. I have these wonderful experiences of accomplishment and wonderful experiences of healing. The healing from the mental health thing, that was huge. But other experiences of healing that I've had in my life and how solid it feels for me, I can't give you that experience. But I can share with you my vision for things, and that's what I try to do. And I have a vision of a different world. I have a vision that we're not here just to rise to the top of the heap. We're here to change the whole thing. It's not just about figuring out how to make our lives better. It's figuring out how to make everybody, the whole world better. The whole world not only just better, but actually radically different. I think we're really here to usher in a very radically different world. And things are happening out there, and they're the little glimpses, and I think if you catch them, it's so easy to ignore them because we just tend to be so cynical all the time. but things are happening. Now, I think it's a big deal, and I think it's still scheduled, that President Trump is going to meet with the North Korean supreme leader in like 2 days in the Philippines, right? That's still happening. It's kind of odd.
Singapore.
In Singapore, in 2 days, I believe. That's fucking amazing. I'm sorry. That's just amazing. It's amazing. And, and I know a lot of my friends, like President Trump, and that's okay. I don't care. But the fact that we're having peace talks with North Korea, this is the axis of evil, we were told, I also heard recently that Israel and Iran now are talking about meeting and having some sort of peace talks. I mean, this is unprecedented and amazing. And the reason those amazing things are happening is because we're here. We're here doing this work. We're here visualizing something different. We're here visualizing a world that works for everybody. The very fact that you're all here today is the energy that's making things like that happen. We have an active part in all of those things. And some of the ideas that I probably have are a little strange, maybe, and outlandish. But I really think I have the vision that we're here to manifest a life, an experience of life that is not marked by decay and death. That we're here to have an experience, even a bodily life, that transcends that. And I don't know what that looks like, but I'm moving in that direction to the best of my ability and getting glimpses of it and just keep moving forward. And I think that's actually what A Course in Miracles teaches. I think it teaches us to embrace something totally different. And we do that every single time we come together. We don't come together for Sunday gatherings just for our own benefit, even though we do benefit. We don't go to meetings and classes, and we don't read spiritual, inspiring literature just for our own benefit. We're doing it for the transformation of the entire universe, really. A Course in Miracles says, a miracle is never lost. It touches many people you do not even know, and sometimes produces undreamed of changes in forces of which you are not even aware. So by being here today, we're producing undreamed of changes in things that we are not even aware. We are alleviating pain in people, in situations that we are not even aware. We don't come here just for our own individual benefit. We come here to transform the world, and we are transforming the world. And that's my birthday message to all of you. Happy birthday to me, happy birthday to me, happy birthday, Reverend Tony, happy birthday to me. Thank you.